Which shoe is better to hoop in? The Jordan Zion 2 or the Jordan Zion 1? Today we're putting the first and second releases from Zion's signature line with Jordan Brand head to head to see how they compare. But really quick, if this is your first time checking us out, feel free to drop a follow or subscribe wherever you're watching and give this video a like. We would greatly appreciate that. So starting off with the box and the price, the Zion 1's come with a pretty simple split box with some black and white, and then you're going to get Zion text showing up on both sides. Then as for this year's Zion 2, there's actually a pretty sweet box. Like, you're going to have that protective sleeve running over the top with some do not open text on one side. You get some Zion text on the other. Then his name shows up on the top of the box as well, and the color of the box actually even matches the colorway for these shoes. So just a good amount of details going on here, but I do want to say this is a special colorway, so I don't really expect all of the upcoming releases to kind of get the same shoe box. I'm sure it'll get simplified going forward, but as for pricing, the Zion 1 did retail for $120, which is going to be on like the middle to cheaper side for a signature shoe line, and the Zion 2s actually stayed the same price right there at $120. So a pretty affordable option, especially for Jordan Brand, so that's nice. So looking at the appearance for these shoes and starting off with the colorways, today we're checking out the Jordan Zion 1 Project Z versus the Jordan Zion 2 Voodoo. So for this review, I'm actually going to start off talking about the Zion 1 first for each section, then I'll kind of move on to the Zion 2 just to kind of point out what changed, what stayed the same, just different stuff like that. So starting off with the Zion 1s, clearly this is Zion's first signature shoe to release with Jordan Brand, and honestly I think they came out really well. So on the side of the upper, you're going to see a black line that breaks up the colors from the front to the back of the shoe, and that's meant to be the letter Z, which is his first initial, so that is a cool minor detail that they added. And then along the heel, you're going to get that same Zion text that shows up from the box. But I do like the font that they use there. I think it's a really cool kind of design. And you're going to get a mismatched tongue setup with the Jumpman logo on the right shoe, followed by Zion's player logo on the left. And the last piece that I'm going to touch on is Zion was kind of big into superheroes growing up. So the tongue kind of flares out, and it's meant to resemble like a cape. So I just like some of those small personal touches that they kind of tossed onto his first shoe. But now switching it over to look at the Zion 2. Really quickly, I do want to hit on this Voodoo colorway because, you can just tell from looking at them that there's a lot of stuff going on. So these are covered in materials that are usually found in traditional dolls and altars of the African-born religious movement. So you can have a bunch of different textures, like the entire tongue is actually made up of like a pony hair type feel, but it is pretty sweet. But now, looking at more of the model itself, and just as far as the structure goes, the height is going to be very similar to the Zion 1s, but there are going to be some changes. So the most noticeable difference would be that Jordan Brand added the strap to this year's Zion 2 model after not having it on the Zion 1. And I actually like the way that it's kind of set up to be a little bit smaller, or kind of thinner. And I'm always a big fan of having the strap on basketball shoes, even if it is just for the looks. But for the tongue on these, you're going to get that same Zion text that showed up from the box, similar to the Zion 1s. And then on the heel for this colorway, you're actually going to get a skull or some type of setup like that. But on most colorways going forward, you're going to get a big Jumpman logo there. This Voodoo pair has a few different features that are going to be specific to this colorway alone. The pony hair, a few different spots are not going to be necessarily consistent with some other models. Same thing with the Nike swoosh on the inside of the upper on these. But overall, I really do like the look, or the start to Zion's line for the appearance for sure. The Zion 1s looked really clean. The Zion 2s are right there with them. But now let's go ahead and set that to the side and check out how both of these shoes hold up on the court. So now getting into more of the materials and the performance side, and starting off with the cushioning, the Zion 1s are going to get a full-length air strobel unit stitched directly to the upper right underneath your foot to give you a cloud-like feel. Then you're going to also have an energy returning Zoom Air unit that's going to be stacked under the forefoot just to add some extra burst of responsiveness. And these have a really nice and springy feel. The foam definitely feels soft from the second that you put these on, making it comfortable for your foot from the jump. You just really shouldn't need a lot of break-in time with these. And then you're going to have some additional cushioning units kind of stacked in the front half of the shoe, but these still do feel pretty balanced from front to back. Doesn't really feel like they left anything out. But now switching it over to look at the Zion 2s. This is actually the first shoe to feature Nike's new large air strobel unit that's going to be placed in the heel, which is there to give you a springy feel, but also give you responsive support. And then in the forefoot, or just the front portion of the shoe, you're going to get a Zoom Air unit to go along with that. So the first thing I did notice initially from the Zion 2 is that it is going to be a little bit more firm compared to the Zion 1s. But you can feel that Zoom Air unit in the forefoot give you a little extra bounce on the 2s. And some changes were made to the heel here, but I know Nike used that whole new setup and it feels pretty good, but if there wasn't something in the product specifics about it, I probably really wouldn't have noticed. It's not, that much higher above. And I'll touch on this now, but I'll touch on this more in a second here. But these are going to have some Achilles pads in the Zion 2 sock liner that are pretty stiff. Like, I didn't really love how it felt. The pads definitely help with support, but I mean, as far as like the overall comfort, I wouldn't say it's the best aspect on this year's Zion 2 model. Honestly, I might kind of prefer it on the Zion 1 split. For materials and support, honestly, I was a little bit surprised at how thin the upper feels on the Zion 1, especially with this being Zion's first shoe. Like, if you know who Zion is, what he looks, and what he plays like, I don't know, I figured they might like use a more firm setup, or at least like throw a strap on there or something just to reinforce the upper a little bit better. Obviously they did that on this year's model, but I mean, the Zion 1, it's going to be mainly just some textiles with some like suede-like feel to the black portion on this toe box. I don't really think all Zion 1s had that spot though, but I mean, the thin upper doesn't actually affect the support on these. The Zion 1 does have a noticeable outrigger that almost looks like, a wing hanging off the side of the shoe. That's just going to act as a brace to kind of keep your foot within the design, just give you some better balance too. And he actually did blow out of the PT 2.5 in college, so I'm not surprised if they added that piece on there. But I mean, overall the support does feel pretty nice. But now switching it over to the Zion 2s, the materials on this colorway won't really line up with most releases going forward. But this Voodoo colorway has a canvas upper with some suede overlays. I am thinking the suede part is going to be more specific to just this model, but I'm not sure what other ones are going to get, but it's just most likely not going to be suede. This isn't going to be a cheap feeling shoe at all. I don't really think either of his first two models here have felt that way, but I mean, you're going to get like a lacing setup that is going to be different on this 2s. They're actually going to feed through the tongue specifically, and it's just a little bit weird to lace them up. Not like it's a big deal or anything. That's just something that I noticed. But I mean, as for the support, that's probably the strong point on this model. Like, it's going to feel like there's definitely less stretch to the materials on the upper for these, which automatically just kind of leads to a more secure feel. And of course, you're going to have that forefoot strap to help eliminate any of that lateral movement on your foot. And then to bring it back to the laces, they actually feed through a brown overlay on the side of the shoe that kind of helps tighten your foot into the design. So there are a lot of good features to help with the support on these, but the heel is where they start to lose me a little bit, but for a different reason. So as far as support goes, I mean, these are going to have those Achilles pads in the sock liner to help make you feel really secure, but I don't know, it just seems like it's a little too much. Like, some other shoes have used that same type of setup, like the Harden 6, the Jordan 35. There's some others out there, and the Achilles pads didn't really bother me the way that they do in these like Zion 2s. So I am going to get a pair in a different colorway just to kind of check that out in the future, see what materials are being used there on every single pair, because I am sure like a few different things that show up on these aren't going to make it onto every pair. But I mean, while those pads, they do help with the support, I wouldn't say it's going to help these be the most comfortable shoe, partially for that reason, but support is like definitely going to be the strongest part of this shoe. And with Zion suffering a few injuries early in his career, with at least one of them coming specifically because of a shoe blowing out on him, really not that surprised if they're placing kind of a special interest on keeping these more sturdy. But I mean, with all the extra materials that they put into these, it did cause the Zion 2 to go up a little bit in weight. They are going to be a little heavier, weighing 464 grams for a size 10.5, which isn't bad, but it is up roughly 70 grams compared to the Zion 1s, which weigh in at 396 grams for the same size. So neither shoe is going to be heavy, but the Zion 1 does feel noticeably lighter to play in. To finish off with traction, the Zion 1 has a multi-directional pattern that doesn't have a real flow to it, and this is the first shoe to release in his line, so it will be kind of interesting to see if they start to develop kind of like a theme that they want to use going forward, whether it be like more random, more organized, having like arrows and lines and stuff like that. But for this model, I mean, they're solid, but it's not going to be anything too special. I wouldn't say they're inconsistent, just not consistently great. But now switching it over to the Zion 2, for the pattern, you're going to get some vertical lines that are a little bit more organized than the Zion 1s. Just think this design sets you up a little bit better for like a better playing feel. I do want to say these do have some nicer grip, but it's still in my early stages of testing these out. I can't say that it's not going to be mind-blowing enough to really set them apart, but I mean, the Zion branding built into the pattern is pretty clean. And then on the heel for these, you're going to get like a herringbone pattern too, with some like more arrows and lines and stuff like that. And I will say it's been solid for me so far. There is definitely some bite on the floor. I haven't really had any times where I noticed the traction specifically not really catching. So I would say the traction alongside the support is maybe one of the better aspects for this shoe. And the grooves are pretty thick, so I feel like they will last a while. So durability shouldn't be bad. Wouldn't like really rush to use these outdoors though, more so for like the cushioning in my opinion. But to finish off with sizing, I went true to size on both of these, and that is probably what I would recommend most likely. The width is going to be normal, but the length, that's about perfect for me. There's not a ton of room left over though, so if you do like more room to play in, you may want to consider going a half size up. So for the final ratings and starting off with the appearance, like I said, I mean, both of these models are really clean, so I'm just going to start off going with the tie. For cushioning, the Zion 2s, they tried out a whole new cushioning setup, and it was good, but I definitely wouldn't say that it was great. For some reason, I feel like the Zion 1s, they just play a little bit softer, and the Achilles pads and the sock liner it just bothers me too much, so I'm going to go with the Zion 1 here. For materials though, I kind of have to avoid this section, and I'm just going to go with the tie because I'm not totally sure what all Zion 2s are going to feel like and what will be used. I mean, these definitely aren't a cheap feeling, but neither is the Zion 1, so that's kind of where the tie comes from. As for support, I mean, the Zion 1s have that outrigger, and I haven't had any issues with the model, but I mean, the Zion 2 just feels, all around better for this category. You got that additional forefoot strap, the overlay that the laces feed through, the upper feels more firm and just kind of minimizes movement. So for all those reasons, I'm going to go Zion 2 here. And to finish off with traction, based on my first impressions, I'm going to lean towards the Zion 2, but just barely. But I mean, that is going to lead for the better shooter hoop in. I am going to go with the Jordan Zion 1. And I know this is going to kind of be a weird one because yes, I can do math, and there were 2 ties, 2 wins for the Zion 2, and 1 win for the Zion 1. But I mean, just as far as like the playing feel, the Zion 1s just have a better on-court feel from my opinion. Like, I'm going to get a new pair of the Zion 2s and kind of see how those play. Honestly, I may have to just end up doing this whole video over again. I guess we'll see. But I mean, each of these shoes are still going to have their attractions. The Zion 1 is just a soft shoe. It's going to feel really light, and the support and the traction are still going to be good. The Zion 2 highlights would be more so the materials and definitely the support. The traction is going to be maybe a touch better, but I mean, the cushioning still needs work in my opinion. Thank you guys for taking some time to watch. If you want to buy the Jordan Zion 1, just click the link here on screen, or we have links for both shoes down below or in our bio, so feel free to check that out. But until next review, I'm Landon from Shoewear. Peace.